Behind closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the For the Win podcast. So great to be with you here. Today is NFL Network fantasy football analyst, and I have to say my personal hero, Adam Rank. Adam, thank you so much for being here. You're the man. We've all watched you growing up. Thank you so much for coming on.
Max, stop. I said I will do the show. We don't have to. Actually, what's funny, and so I had to implore Max to hit record because I don't know if he's funny all the time, but for the 5 minutes before we came on the air, he was killing. He was Bill Burr. He was just crushing the – I know you guys don't know who Bill Burr is, but trust me, that is a funny person that I am comparing you to.
I appreciate that. I've always been told first impressions go a long way. Just any impression goes a long way with you. We're so excited to have you here. We got a great show. We're going to be talking about a few topics at each position. And from NFL Network to this podcast, we will be rolling on with the hype train. Me and Rank going at it with some great players. I know he's excited. I mean, I couldn't even sleep last night thinking about that. And then we got some fan questions. It's going to be a great show. So let's start off at the quarterback position. Rank, let me ask you, what's your strategy when you're drafting a QB? Do you want to wait, or are you comfortable taking a guy in the 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th round?
Yeah, I believe that a lot of people have heard this ad nauseum with the wait on a quarterback. There's no reason to use a pick so early. And I think that anybody who's not, for us, we're hardcore guys. We understand. But, like my mom or my sister is not going to understand, why wouldn't I want Patrick Mahomes? I don't get this. And fantasy can be weird that way. And I will say a little example the last season where Patrick Mahomes was crushing it. He was a great player the first 5 weeks of the season. He was still the QB5. He was being outscored by Deshaun Watson. Josh Allen was ahead of him, I know for a fact. But Lamar Jackson was ahead of him. So you can wait for these guys, and it just the way fantasy football works, unless you tweak your scoring system. I know my good friend James Coe likes to wait the quarterbacks who don't throw interceptions, which I'm kind of into because last year, let me tell you this story. I'm sure you guys have heard of the fantasy footballers. Those guys are amazing. Everybody knows who they are. I'm in a league against them. Lamar Jackson goes out on Thursday Night Football, crushes it. Or no. Yeah, Thursday Night Football, crushes it. I'm like, I want to beat these clowns. It's the playoffs. I'm going to send them on their way. They start Jameis Winston, who throws 38 interceptions in one game. And then all of a sudden he scores 3 less points than Lamar Jackson. I'm like, this is why quarterback scoring is garbage, because there's got to be a way to penalize these people. But if you're playing in a standard league, the smart thing to do, be like the footballers, be little, shysters, and get a guy like Jameis to be as good as the stud who I was riding all year, Lamar Jackson. But you know what? Last year, I also got him in the 11th round. So, there will be somebody that you can get later in your drafts this year who will end up helping you, losing the semifinals to some guys with some glorious beards.
I mean, yeah, I picked up Lamar off the waiver a week before the season began. I mean, it speaks for itself. He was just phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I think another example of that late round pick last year, Dak Prescott, when the double-digit rounds finished, I believe, maybe just outside the top 5 in there. Depends on your league scoring. So there's a lot of talent back there. So
he was 2 in NFL.com standard scoring. He was the number 2 fantasy quarterback, and nobody wants to draft him, which is crazy to me. But yeah, I agree, Max.
Absolutely. And speaking about those late round QBs, do you think there's one that maybe can finish in the top 10, even top 5 in terms of fantasy points this year?
There's a ton of those guys. I mean, obviously a lot of people are going to pass on Baker Mayfield because of what happened last season, and which is a huge mistake, because passing on Baker Mayfield would be like Ryan Reynolds not being allowed to do Deadpool because he was so bad as the Green Lantern. And again, I look at you guys and I'm like, you have no idea who Ryan Reynolds – no, Deadpool, that's somewhat current.
Yeah.
But you can't go on what happened last season, because so much of what happened in Cleveland last year was because, number one, the coach was bad, and thankfully he's gone, and they brought in Kevin Stefanski. Number 2, the offensive line was having some troubles too, because as fun as it is to trade for Odell Beckham Jr., they traded away Kevin Zeitler, and they had a huge hole in their offensive line, so they went out. They signed Jack Conklin in the free agency period. They drafted Jedrick Willis. Now their offensive line is good. They've got Kevin Stefanski. And the one thing that Stefanski was great at was designing those play action plays. Kirk Cousins led the NFL in passer rating on play action. It was like 130 something. Baker Mayfield, who was also pretty good on play action, is now going to be even better. So I look at him. I look at a guy like Daniel Jones playing with Jason Garrett this year. When Jason Garrett took over as the quarterback, or as the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys way back in the day, I think it was 2006, Tony Romo had one of the best seasons of his career, throwing for 4,200 yards, 36 touchdowns. And so I look at those guys. I think those are two dudes that you can wait on, obviously. And listen, I just did a mock draft with some other people, and Aaron Rodgers was available in the 12th round, and I had Devontae Adams already. And believe me, I would hate having a team with two Packers on it. But again, people are disrespecting Aaron Rodgers. I get it when I do it because I'm a Bears fan, and that's just kind of what we do. But people, like, that's the kind of value that you find.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Baker, I think a huge thing for him also, Austin Hooper's there.
Yeah.
Great tight end, fits in. I mean, there's so many weapons around him. He has one of the best chances to finish as a top player at his position on the Browns, because we see at the wide receiver position, Odell, Jarvis, they all got to compete for targets. Still got Kareem Hunt coming out of the backfield. So Baker's definitely in a great situation.
Yeah, and Austin Hooper was great last year in Atlanta, and he played on a team that had Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, and yet he still went out there and scored a lot of fantasy points. So I don't think it's going to be a huge issue for him.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, are you comfortable having Daniel Jones as your number one guy in your team, or do you think you definitely need someone else as a backup when you have Daniel Jones?
Again, it comes back to your scoring. If you're playing with standard scoring, I think that you could actually get away with streaming quarterbacks. I mean, again, going back to the example of the fantasy footballers last year, if you don't strike on a guy where it's going to be a guy who's able to carry your team like Lamar Jackson did last year, then you could probably stream and find some players. And I understand that it's going to seem weird if you go into the year and you see Daniel Jones as your starting quarterback, you're going to have a little apprehension. So if you wanted to pair him with another player like Ryan Tannehill, I think Cam Newton gets disrespected a lot from fantasy enthusiasts because they don't believe that he can come back and be a good quarterback. People act like he's washed up. I'm like, he's the same age as Taylor Swift. Like he's a young person. Like he's still, I mean, they're all young to be, but he's a young guy. Like this could actually be like it wasn't too long ago that he was the face of the NFL. In 2015, he was the MVP. He was leading his team to the Super Bowl. Heck, if you go back to 2018, during the 14 games that he played, the first 14 games of the season, he was the quarterback 5. So again, there's guys who are being disrespected all over the place. I would actually feel comfortable rolling with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of waiting on quarterbacks. It lets you build a deeper team, and that's what's ultimately going to get you farther in the playoffs. And this last QB question, these guys are going very early in draft, so let's just settle it once for all. Rank, who do you want as your fantasy quarterback between Lamar or Mahomes?
If I had to pick one of those two guys and I was forced to choose, I believe Lamar Jackson. Yeah, I still would do it. I know they're gonna pull back his running a little bit, but at the same time, like once you start playing, you just play. I know it's a good plan. You're like, I'm planning to do my homework early. You know how it is. Like I'm going to do my homework on Friday afternoon. Then I'm not going to have to worry about it over the weekend. And then what happens Sunday night at 8 p.m., you're like, I got to start my homework. Like that's just the thing that happens. Similarly, these quarterbacks have these plans of like, I'm gonna try to distribute the ball more. But then once dudes are running after you, you're like, nah, I'm gonna go. Your instincts take over, and you end up doing what made you so good before. So I believe that his running ability, plus the whole notion of wanting to go out there and prove something. We saw this 2 years ago, where they had a disaster of a playoff game against the LA Chargers. He responded the next season by being the NFL MVP. Last year, they had a disastrous end to the season. He is even more determined this year to prove that last year wasn't a fluke. So I feel very comfortable going with Lamar Jackson. He's a little bit hungrier. I know Mahomes is great and everything, but I think when you're a Super Bowl champion, there's something, you lose a little bit of an edge, even though they want to admit that they don't. You certainly do.
Yeah, I saw his Instagram post and he was like, "Oh, I'm 0-2. I don't want to go home again." So, I mean, you're right. He's thirsty. He's ready to feast the season. I mean, we mentioned running with Lamar. I think that's a perfect way to transition us into the running back position. So, I mean, I'll just ask. I know it's a little on the spot, but which running back handcuff do you think has the most value this season?
Alexander Madison. I
Ooh, I
know
like
that
it.
people are Dalvin Cook. I like Dalvin Cook, and he's a talented player. When he came out of Florida State, I thought that he was going to come into the league and make an impact. The one problem that he's had is staying healthy. Last year, obviously, he played in 14 games, but down the stretch, especially in week 16 when he didn't play, which is the fantasy football Super Bowl for most of us, he played in 14 games, the last 4 games of the season from weeks 11 through 15. He averaged 10 fantasy points per game in PPR leagues. That is not good. That is the RB25. So now people are drafting him, acting like he's in the same category as CMC, as Saquon, as Ezekiel Elliott, as Alvin Kamara. I'm not doing that. I'm not playing that game. And I'm not, no disrespect to him or anything like that. When you have a player on an offense that's going to run the football an awful lot, if I have to take a handcuff, and I did this in the draft I just did this morning, I took Alexander Madison because he has the ability to actually be an RB1 if he was given the chance to run with the football.
He shined last year in the chance he was given, on the couple runs he got per game. So I agree. That's a great handcuff, Max.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most useful handcuffs last year was Latavius Murray when Alvin Kamara went down. This guy put up some big games. So it's just another example that when these guys get a chance, it's destined for greatness, and their ADP is insane getting these guys in double-digit rounds. So even if you select a guy like, I don't know, let's say Derrick Henry. Oh, Derrick Henry doesn't have a handcuff. So never mind, but always
No,
select
they
him.
got the rookie, why is his name escaping me? But no,
Is it
they drafted.
Darrington Evans?
Yeah, Darrington
Yeah.
Evans. And there is, again, that is somebody who I would draft. And I think one of the things that you need to be mindful of this year, which is a little bit different than some years, like I know my friend Matt Harmon always said, like, don't worry about handcuffs, just pick good players. We've seen that the talent pool, especially at running back, shrink a little bit. Everybody has a running back by committee. But with everything that's going on in the world, and especially with COVID and everything that is happening, hopefully your leagues have extra spaces, extra roster spots, I should say. I know if you join an NFL.com league, and you can go to my Instagram at AdamRankNFL, the link is in the bio to download the all-new NFL Fantasy app. Number one, any league that you start will have 3 additional roster spots for COVID designations. And of course, you can customize it to add as many as you would like. I would implore anybody who's playing this season to make sure you have additional roster spots. And so in the past, where you might have looked past the handcuff, we're now making sure that you're drafting them. And even if you don't have Ezekiel Elliott and you still want to draft Tony Pollard, I still believe that's a great idea because this is going to be a season unlike any other. So everything is off the books. So try to get as many handcuffs as possible because you might just need them.
I agree. And then moving on to the Chiefs backfield, ever since Damian Williams, recently opted out because of COVID, Clyde Edward-Hilaire's, ADP's risen. So in drafts, he's being taken in the late second round. Do you think his ADP is correct, or would you, maybe consider taking him earlier than that, later than that? What do you think?
It's funny because I keep seeing him go in the first round now. And of course,
Yeah.
This is industry people. And I know it sounds super pretentious to be like, oh, industry people. Cause that's like the worst thing. It's like when you get a bunch of comics together and you'll be, oh, but so-and-so is the funniest person I've ever, I've never heard of that guy. Like, don't stop saying that stuff. But the interesting thing about Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the comparison that Andy Reid made when he was drafted, because he told a story that one of his scouts told him, like, hey, make sure you take a look at this kid from LSU. He's as good as Brian Westbrook. And Andy Reid watched the tape and said that he was better. And that kind of stuff sticks out because I'm old enough to remember when Brian Westbrook was an excellent NFL player and a great fantasy teammate. Yeah, I'm going to call him a teammate. I don't know why I'm stuck on that pronoun because I'm an idiot. But when you hear comparisons like that, it stands out to me. I don't think that was coach speak or anything like that. Andy Reid is not that type of guy. I already thought that he was going to end up being the number one running back. But once Damian opted out, I was all in. And so I've been drafting at the end of the first round and have not gotten a chance to draft him. And it's crazy. And again, I hate to keep throwing back to this draft that I did today, but it's telling that Clyde Edwards-Helaire went 8th. I was afraid that somebody might have been auto picking. And so Miles Sanders was ahead of Josh Jacobs. And I'm like, well, I'm going to take Miles Sanders just in case because of the auto. I don't want to get auto picked out of there. The guy behind me, because I was at 11, the dude behind me did take Josh Jacobs, which was pretty upsetting to me. But you see a lot of these guys. I think that running backs are at a premium this year. And because of that, where zero RB was something that became a bit of a fad and all that stuff, suddenly guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who are talented and playing on great teams, are now going in the first round. So I don't know. I would love to get him in the second round if that was possible, but I don't know that that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I think what makes people so excited about him is that LSU, he caught so many passes out of the backfield. I think maybe some people see that potential with the Chiefs, probably the best offense in the NFL. I guess you can see both aspects of his game kind of come to fruition in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, Rank, you touched about Miles Sanders briefly. I'm a big fan of his. No Jordan Howard, the backfield to himself. And we saw those weeks where he was the starting running back. He absolutely tore up defenses. And I'd love to see him do that again. That's a guy you can get in the, I'd say, middle of the second round, maybe early second round.
Yeah, no, if we're lucky, yeah. I love him too. And it was weeks 11 through 16 where he was the RB3, where he was averaging close to 100 scrimmage yards per game. He scored 4 touchdowns. And his only competition right now is Boston Scott, who sounds like a nickname that Michael Scott would have given himself in the Dunder Mifflin boardroom. So, and I'm sorry if you've heard that joke before. I might have said it some other time, whatever. Listen, you come to the 7:30 show and the 10:30 show, sometimes the jokes repeat. I apologize for that. So I'm a human being. I forget what I say sometimes. But I love him. And I think people have just been apprehensive in drafting Miles Sanders because they don't think that he can have a full workload. But Deuce Staley, the Eagles running back coach, has come out and said that he's ready to give him a full workload. And I think that 18, 19 touches, I think that's completely reasonable for a guy like Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, the running back position is obviously more slim this year than usual. So, do you see a running back being a complete bust that's going in the first or second round this season?
Not exactly. Like, I've been avoiding Aaron Jones because of the 19 touchdowns and them drafting A.J. Dillon. Like, I'm not disrespecting Aaron Jones. The Packers GM is. They drafted his replacement. Like, listen, I would have done whatever. I would have been fine with him. But you drafted his replacement, so I'm just going to be out on that. And you think about Matt LaFleur being in Tennessee and having Derrick Henry. He knows what type of running back that he wants. And I think ultimately they want to have a team very similar to the team that they have in Tennessee right now, where they have a quarterback who's athletic. And obviously Aaron Rodgers is athletic. But one of the reasons you go for somebody like Jordan Love is that his athleticism is going to lead you in a couple of years. You have a big back like A.J. Dillon, especially when those games get into the winter months and it gets a little bit colder. That's going to be a pretty good recipe for them. And I think that is Matt LaFleur's vision. Obviously, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy and ready to go, he's not coming off the field. But I do believe that we're going to see more A.J. Dillon earlier in this year than a lot of people are anticipating. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up usurping Aaron Jones. So I avoid him at pretty much all costs. Like, if Aaron Jones was there in the 10th round, I would take him. But, I mean, like, where he's going, where his ADP is now at the end of the second round, sometimes the third, I'm out. Like, nope. And plus, it's a Packer. So any excuse I have to not take a Packer, I'm going to take full advantage of that.
Absolutely.
All right, now we're going to move on to some wide receiver questions, and I'm just going to start this off with a simple Buccaneers wide receiver question. And I've seen both perspectives and sides of this, but who do you think will have the better fantasy season, Mike Evans or Chris Godwin?
People are making that comparison to Chris Godwin being the Julian Edelman, but I really do believe that when you just look at Bruce Arians' offense, it is going to favor Chris Godwin. Now, we could see some teams kind of slide protection and kind of slide some coverage towards Chris Godwin. But the thing is like Mike Evans is such a dangerous receiver on his own that you really can't do that. You really can't leave him unaccounted. So it's always going to be a mismatch. And again, with Brady's arm strength, and I'm sure he can throw the ball further than what we've seen over the last couple of years in New England. I think too, like being in the warmer weather, I know this sounds dumb, but like Brady and I are the same age. And it's like, yeah, when it's cold, like I don't want to go outside. Like it'll be like, I'm such a like an old man now. Like if it's below 70, it's like, I'm not going to golf today. Like I can't do it. Like, so I get it. Like I understand where Brady's coming from. Like we're old men now. Like, it's too cold to get out. Like I get it. I would move to Florida as well. So I don't think that he's as bad as he looked at the end of last year with New England, but I still believe that they're going to focus on quick strikes. They're going to use Chris Godwin a lot. I think he's going to be the most targeted receiver in that offense, which means he's going to end up with the most fantasy points. I do like Mike Evans for the touchdown potential, and I know they have Gronk there, but Mike Evans is a Gronk-type receiver who's going to win one-on-one battles, especially when you get near the goal line too. So I like the touchdown upside of Mike Evans, but that's too volatile. I think what you can count on is Chris Godwin being funneled targets, and that's why I would lean towards him.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. I think Chris Godwin is very talented. I think Mike Evans is talented, but I'm still interested to see how far can Brady hit those deep shots that Evans is really good at running. He's a great deep route runner, and Chris Godwin specializes in what Brady specializes. That's middle routes, catching them, getting open. So definitely go with Chris Godwin. That's just my opinion. I guess that's yours too.
No, but it seems too easy, Max. Like that's the whole thing is like when you break it's like this is the type of receiver that thrives under Brady. And then people, and I think because everybody is out there trying to overanalyze these things or making too big, like, yeah, there's sometimes the simplest answer is actually the correct one. Like this is a perfect Tom Brady type receiver. This is a Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, that type of player. Why are we overthinking this? So I'm all in on Chris Godwin.
I totally agree. I had Chris Godwin last year. I think I took him in the middle rounds. He was awesome. And moving on, this draft was one of the most talented rookie wide receiver classes in years. It contained Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs, Justin Jefferson, and more. So what is the earliest round you would consider drafting one of these talented rookies?
Well, the thing is, Garrett, I think in a lot of other years, we would be very excited about these rookies coming into the league, especially now. With the offenses that the college teams run, these are pro offenses. I mean, just look at what LSU was able to do last year. Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, he had come from the Saints. Now he has moved on to the Carolina Panthers. The offense that the Tigers were running was a pro offense. The only thing is that these rookie wide receivers don't have the extended training camps and mini camps and all that stuff. So it's going to hurt them a little bit. And for me, I've been dropping them down a little bit. Whereas in recent years, I would have taken a chance on somebody like Justin Williams, who to me is probably the rookie you should look at first because, number one, he's got a great opportunity in Minnesota opposite of Adam Thielen. He's probably the best route runner coming into the league right now. So there's a lot of things going in his favor. But I've noticed that over the last couple of drafts and in the mocks that I've done, I've started to lean more towards the veteran receivers, guys like Will Fuller, guys like Marvin Jones Jr., where in years past, I might have taken an early shot on one of these rookies. I'm now waiting a little bit, but I think that Justin's got a great chance. Justin Rieger with the Philadelphia Eagles, just with the issues that they've had at wide receiver, there could be a huge opportunity for him. And Jerry Jeudy is a great receiver, but he's going to be battling some other guys, including Cortland Sutton. CeeDee Lamb, probably the best receiver to come out in this draft. He's still going to be contending with Amari Cooper, with Michael Gallup. So it's a little bit riskier, but I think that you can still find value with them, but I'm just drafting them a little bit later.
Yeah, and especially that they didn't get all the pro experience in the extended training camps, which is kind of hard. I think that you have to get these training camps in to get them the pro experience. Max.
Yeah, Rank, you touched about Jalen Rieger. I think that his situation's interesting because who do the Eagles have left at this point? Alshon Jeffrey can never play. Josh McCown is just not a reliable fantasy wide receiver. Neither is Greg Ward. So he could definitely get in there. And who knows, maybe Jalen Hurts will play some wide receiver too. So definitely a good chance for him to take advantage of this opportunity.
And that's another reason I like Miles Sanders too.
Exactly.
I mean, the Eagles run a lot of 12 personnel, which means Zach Ertz is their most targeted receiver, but Dallas Goedert gets targeted a lot as well. And I could see a thing where your top 3 Eagles pass catchers are the 2 tight ends and Miles Sanders. So yeah, I agree. I think, right? We were on the right. Max, we agreed, right?
Absolutely, Rank.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, you guys are talking about Justin Jefferson. I was actually surprised that Rieger went in front of him to the Eagles, but I like what Diggs leaving now. I think, like you said, Rank, I like how you promote Jefferson. I think that's a good pick this year.
I agree, Brandon. In my mock draft, I had Williams going to the Eagles because I thought that made the most sense. But I think that what the Eagles liked was that Rieger plays a lot like Deshaun Jackson and that he has somebody to pattern his game after. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think in the long run, they might end up regretting that.
All right. So my last wide receiver question is there a wide receiver in the double-digit rounds that you believe has tremendous upside this year?
Obviously, Hunter Renfrow is a player that I draft a lot, playing the slot for the Raiders. I think that he's going to have a huge opportunity. I know that Derek Carr came out recently and said that he's tired of getting disrespected. I'm tired of him getting disrespected. So I love taking Hunter Henry. 3 of my last picks in most drafts. I think Cam Newton's starting to fly off the board. So, but earlier I would always go Cam. I would go with Hunter Renfrow, and then I would take Blake Jarwin at the tight end position. But I like Hunter Renfrow a lot. I think N'Keal Harry is another guy that I'm going to be taking a look at. He's dropping into the double-digit rounds. So he's interesting to me. Curtis Samuel, I'm not sure that he's going to have the volume that somebody like DJ Moore is going to have with the Carolina Panthers, but I think that he has some opportunities. I know the coaches have been talking him up a little bit, so I think that they're going to find creative ways to get him the football. So those are some of the guys that I've been looking at.
Yeah, I mean, one guy I've been looking at in the later rounds, he's actually a Chicago Bear, Anthony Miller. Anthony Miller, very sneaky pick. And for me, it's because Taylor Gabriel's no longer there. I think Miller's the go-to second guy. Jimmy Graham, not a reliable tight end. So definitely. And Allen Robinson's always going to draw the number 1 corner. So Anthony Miller could have a very good year.
Yeah, I don't want to come off like a homer, but I completely agree with you.
I read your mind.
All right, so now moving on to the tight ends. We're going to start right away with maybe the most debatable topic with the tight ends. So, Rank, who do you have as the best tight end this year? George Kittle or Travis Kelce? And then when would you take one of these guys in a draft?
I've been taking the coward's way out, and I kind of split it. Some drafts I'll take Kelce, some I'll take Kittle. I've noticed Kittle's been falling a little bit, which I don't understand. I think that once I'm doing real drafts that I'm going to end up taking George Kittle. I think that he has the ability to take that step forward as the 49ers offense continues to evolve. I expect them to rely more on George Kittle. And I know they drafted Brandon Ayuk out of Arizona State, but to me, Kittle is their number 1 pass catcher, where with Kansas City, you're looking at Tyreek Hill being their number 1 guy. They throw to the running backs out of the backfield. Mecole Hardman is starting to step up as well. Not that Kelsey's going to not be one of the 2 best tight ends in the game, but I kind of favor George Kittle at this point. Plus, he's a huge wrestling mark, and I like that. He follows me on Twitter, so why wouldn't I pick George Kittle? So, like that's sometimes the analysis you have to bring. Like, who is following me on Twitter? Boom. And if it's George Kittle, that's great. If it's Trubisky, you're like, yeah, I don't know, dude. I'm not doing it. But it's a little bit different. One of the things that I did last year is I started taking Kelce or Kittle in the first 2 rounds. And I was ignoring the running back. I would go with either like Michael Thomas or Chris Godwin in the first round, and then followed up by taking Kelce. Typically it was Kelce. Sometimes it was Kittle, but mostly it was Kelce. And what I was trying to do was avoiding that streaming of the tight end option, which is so annoying. And even though Travis Kelce didn't have his greatest season, it wasn't like he was the best. But when you consider that I never had to worry about a tight end, and that every week I knew my tight end position was going to give me double-digit points, and I wasn't rolling out somebody like Ryan Griffin hoping that he was going to catch a touchdown or something. Like, there's a lot of you feel good about that. You feel okay. And my third pick was often Aaron Jones, and he obviously did what he did. So I felt comfortable with that. I think this year I'm having to recalibrate a little bit because I don't like, if I don't get a running back in the first round, I don't like taking Kelsey because I don't want to have to wait to the third round because there's such a premium on running backs this year that you're not going to find an Aaron Jones this year in the third round. I don't think so. You're going to have to hope that somebody like Matt Breida comes through or something like that. So if I get fortunate, if I have like one of the first picks in the draft and I can sneak Kittle in at the end of the second round, the beginning of the third round, something like that, that's what I would love to do. It just hasn't been working out, which means I have to adjust. And then moving forward, I have to, hope that Mark Andrews sticks around for a couple of picks. Perhaps I'm going to take a chance on Evan Ingram because, again, going back to Jason Garrett, when he took over as offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, Jason Witten had one of the best seasons of his career. So those are a couple of the ways that you could go. Take a look at Evan Ingram. Obviously, Blake Jarwin I've been talking about ad nauseum. Tyler Higbee scares me, so I'm like, I don't want to go that route either. So I don't know. Like it's a tough situation to be in. I wish there was. I know that Ertz is also a possibility too, but you got to hope that he gets to the third round as well. So I had to adjust it a little bit, but I do want to get one of the big two in the first 3 rounds if I could do it, but it's not always the case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you with George Kittle. I think one of the big things, it's either good or bad. You can view it either way. Emmanuel Sanders is no longer there, and Deebo Samuel's injured. So he's going to get a lot of targets, which also means he's going to draw a lot of attention. So it's either going to go really good or just, he's going to be what he did maybe last year, be a good tight end, but those targets could get him to that top tight end spot, in my opinion.
One other thing to also keep in mind, too, with George Kittle is that the Seahawks traded for Jamal Adams because they faced George Kittle so much. The Arizona Cardinals drafted Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah.
With the idea of covering George Kittle. So, I don't know. That scares me a little bit, but he's still a great player, so not completely.
Yeah, Rank, I think we're in the same boat. I took Kelsey at the end of the second round last year, but then I felt like I was limited at the receiver position, and Robinson was my number 1 for most of the year. So it's definitely a debate I think a lot of people are going to have this year, especially with the limited running backs like you were saying. And then moving on, we talked about Ingram. So do you think Ingram can be a solid tight end 1 this year? And then do you think he can kind of sneak into that really top tier of tight ends?
Yeah, I mean, really the only thing that's holding him back is his availability. I mean, if he's out on the field, he is going to be a good player. And it's just how comfortable you are investing in a player like that. Again, you're going to have to look and hope that somebody else is available later on in your drafts. Maybe you take Gerald Everett. Maybe you take, Tyler Higbee is obviously a good option as well. Austin Hooper, who we talked about earlier, is somebody who falls. Like everybody thinks it with David Njoku there, that he's not going to be a viable option at the tight end position, but I certainly disagree with that. So if you take Evan Ingram, who, again, I like, and I think that Jason Garrett's going to help him out a lot, you're probably going to have to take a second tight end. And you know what? Brandon, that's really one of the things that you probably should do this year. Again, this is an unprecedented time. Normally, we don't take more than 1 tight end. Normally, we don't take more than 1 quarterback. But I think given the situation and how quickly things could change this year, that you might want to double up on the quarterback and the tight end position for sure.
Especially with extra roster spots, if that's what's happening, especially in the NFL league. There's no point not to.
No, I agree. That's exactly what you need to do.
Yeah, you guys actually mentioned Blake Jarwin, who is Max's guy from the beginning. Going on Blake Jarwin.
Love Blake Jarwin.
So is there a breakout tight end? I know you mentioned a few, but is there one guy you're kind of looking for to pick a big step up this year that we haven't seen last year?
Well, I think, a lot of people will probably wonder, like, why do you guys keep pumping this guy up? I've never heard of him. But you realize last year, Jason Witten was a good tight end. Like, he was one of the league leaders in the position in red zone targets. And between him and Randall Cobb, they had 177 targets last year. They're gone. And I know that we love CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is not getting 177 targets. That's why we were looking at somebody like Blake Jarwin. And again, I know that everybody loves Tyler Higbee. Higbee's breakout came when Gerald Everett was injured. So again, I look at that and I think to myself, you know what? You could probably find some value with Gerald Everett. And I know, listen, my guy Max was sitting there besmirching the name of Jimmy Graham. But I'm just saying that Bears offense, that Matt Nagy offense, favors a tight end that can catch the football. I'm not saying draft him in the 3rd round or something, but listen, you want to have a second tight end just in case he has a little bit of a breakout?
Never know.
There's my homer pick. There it is. I wouldn't talk about Anthony Miller, but I'll talk about Jimmy Graham.
I mean, speaking of the Bears, didn't they just take a tight end, Cole Kmet, too? They took another tight end.
But that's the way the offense runs. They need 2 tight ends to make that offense work. They knew that Jimmy Graham was going to be their guy, but Cole Kmet's a pretty good blocker. He's going to do some other things. So I know it looks bad, and I know everybody loved to make jokes about the number of tight ends the Bears had on their roster, but it's the way that the team is constructed that you need 2 quality tight ends, and I think that's what the Bears were going for. That's how good the Bears are. They're drafting for depth, bro. We already got a bunch of good starters. We didn't need somebody. I mean, maybe a quarterback, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly. All you need is a good quarterback who doesn't overthrow someone by 10 yards every play. But
that seems mad. Hold on. That seems rude. How dare you? Take that Jay Cutler jersey off. Can people see us? Is this a video thing? What's going on?
Yeah.
I think we'll post a little video on the Instagram. Yeah.
I can get the Pizza Port shirt on.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Repping my boys' favorite movies.
I mean, all I'm going to say is an Allen Robinson owner last year, it was a little disappointing at a few points of the year. That's all I'm going to say.
Allen Robinson was great. Every receiver gets overthrown from time to time. Listen, I watched plenty of Falcons games. Matt Ryan would miss Julio Jones. So don't sit here and just act like it's a Mitch thing when these other quarterbacks.
And as a Julio Jones owner, I was a little upset too. So I think everyone's upset sometimes.
As a DJ Moore owner, I was upset when Kyle Allen forgot how to throw
Oh
a football.
my God, that was brutal. And DJ Moore was so good with like terrible quarterback play.
Exactly.
I feel like he's being undervalued. I'm like, I saw some list. And again, everybody makes lists and you got to do your thing. Somebody was like, yeah, I don't know. I think that DJ Moore's going to regress. I'm like, regress with a better quarterback? A coordinator who knows what he's doing? Like, stop it.
Yeah, I mean, so guys, that's going to do it from the position standpoint. But this is what I've been waiting for. I know it's what the fans have been waiting for. It's hype train time right here on For the Win podcast. Let's get it going. I know Rank is doing the hype train dance. I'm going to do it with them. The first train coming down the track is New York's new football son. Fans loved him, even though his team barely won. He's great against man coverage, but not against zones. Rank, tell me, are you on board with Daniel Jones?
I'm on board.
Yes, he's on board. I am as well. Rank, why are you on board with Daniel Jones?
Well, when Jason Garrett took over as the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, Tony Romo had one of the best years of his career, throwing for over 4,200 yards and 36 touchdowns. And look, Daniel Jones might not do that this season, but he's got a legitimate coordinator with him. He's got some good, young, undervalued receivers. Punch my ticket because I'm on that Daniel Jones hype train.
Absolutely. Me too. Coming down the track next is a running back who has gotten hurt a bit, but his desire to be a star is why he doesn't quit. It's a crowded backfield, so he has to compete. In his rookie year, for weeks, we considered him among the fantasy elite. Mr. Rank, would you do me the honor of telling me whether you're on board with James Conner?
Give me that ticket because I'm on board. Yes.
We are 2 for 2.
Dude, listen, the one thing that when you look at the Steelers team, they were so close to making the playoffs with some of the worst quarterback play I have ever seen. And I'm a Bears fan. I know terrible quarterback play. Mason Rudolph, Duck Hodges were brutal. And now once Ben Roethlisberger returns, he doesn't have to be 2012 peak Ben Roethlisberger. He can just be barely above replacement level. And you're going to see all these players thrive. Juju will be back. Deontay Johnson will have a breakout season. And one guy that I'm really excited to see, James Conner, get an opportunity once again. Somebody that we've all rooted for ever since he stepped onto the field with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm on board. I got my tickets already, ready to go.
You know what, Rank, I kind of had to cancel my ticket after the draft because I think it's a little crowded. You got Benny Snell. They drafted Anthony McFarland Jr. So I don't know if there's enough room on this train for him to go to his destination, which for him, I guess, is a top 12 fantasy finish. So
Yeah, but they they wanted to put in a little extra work into that hype train of Anthony McFarland, but you know what? It's had to sit back in the shop for a couple extra months. We haven't seen it yet. I mean, it's August, and this is the first time that we're actually seeing it. I think it might take some time. Don't count out James Conner. How dare you?
I mean, this
You
is
know,
a
give me
train
your
that's
ticket. I don't want you on board.
Oh, come on. No,
You're out,
don't do that
Max.
to me. All right. Maybe on this train, I'll be welcome in. The next train coming down the track is a man no one knew about in last year's draft, but after watching him, we all enjoyed a laugh. His QB situation may not be the best, but this talented wide receiver was a pick out of a treasure chest. Torching defenses with his insane route running and his scoring. Rank, are you on board with scary Terry McLaurin?
Get me a first class ticket. Get me in the beverage cart because I am on board with F1 Terry McLaurin. He doesn't like scary Terry. Listen. This is a player that I'm willing to overreach for in fantasy drafts. He is going to be the most targeted receiver out of that Washington football team. And again, I don't understand the people that disrespect that they don't want to go out and take this player. I don't know if this is a knock on Dwayne Haskins or what it could be, but I am on board with Terry McLaurin. This to me is one of the easiest picks of the whole draft. And if this is a player that you end up with as your wide receiver 2, dude, you are going to have a league winner.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not just on board with Terry. You might as well let me conduct the train. I think he's a great pick. I mean, I think like you said, he's going to have a lot of targets. And I think the Redskins are going to be down in a lot of games, so they're definitely going to need to throw the ball. So I'm on board with Terry. I would like to control the train that Terry is on because I know he is going for greatness. And this last train coming down the track plays at one of the harder positions to draft. But with his late round ADP, he could be a good snatch. Always been a backup, but nothing more. With his new team situation, he could be a tight end to explore. As far as being the starting tight end, this gig is his first. Rank, tell me, are you on board with Hayden Hurst?
I'm on board.
Oh, yeah, 4 for 4.
You know what? Yeah, you know what? Yeah, they got to replace the production there. And I know that everybody is excited about Calvin Ridley and what he can do, but I think that this is a pretty good opportunity for him, and I think that this is going to be a chance for him to break out and really show what he's been able to do. So, yeah, give me, again, I feel remiss that we didn't talk about him previously when we were going over the tight ends, but I think this is a wonderful pick, Max.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm on board. I'm not conducting the train like Terry, but I think he's a great pick for his ADP. I mean, I think it's just around the double-digit rounds, according to what I just read earlier. So he's definitely going to have a chance to get those targets, especially with Austin Hooper leaving. I think Devontae Freeman kind of got a little more targets than we expected out of the backfield. So Todd Gurley's going to help that, open up the run game, opens up the pass game. That's how it all works. So I'm definitely on board with Hayden Hurst. And that sadly concludes the hype train. This is definitely one of the top moments in For the Win podcast.
What?
No,
That was so good.
This is a clip. That one's a clip.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That was going on the Instagram.
good.
I don't know if my rhymes were as good as yours, but
Oh my
I
gosh,
gave it
you
my
were
all
dropping you were like Eminem and I was the dude that got clowned in 8 Mile. Like that was really good.
I felt like I was Adam Rank and you were just Marcus Grant. We were having a good time.
We were
in the
having a
studio.
time. No, this was amazing. It was fun being here, just listening to the rhymes and just having a good time. So thank you for taking me along on the ride there, Max. That was awesome.
Absolutely. And we're done with the hype train, but we do have some fan questions. Chris, I'm going to send it over to you.
We do. We have a couple before we wrap up. I know we touched on DJ Moore a little bit, but MLB._district on Instagram comes in and asks, is DJ Moore a top 10 receiver this year?
Yeah, I would agree. I think so. I think when you look at some of the teams that have new quarterbacks coming in, there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve as these guys get familiar with the offense. What a lot of people might not realize is that when Teddy Bridgewater first arrived in New Orleans, Joe Brady was an offensive assistant with the team. Now, obviously, he left for 1 year to go be the offensive coordinator for the LSU Tigers. So he has the terminology down. He has familiarity with this offense. So Teddy is not going to have as steep of a learning curve as somebody else going into a brand new offense. So I have no hesitation with DJ Moore and do believe that he's going to go out and build on his breakout season from last year.
Yeah, I think DJ Moore is a great wide receiver. And also, he's actually going to be in a real offense, not the Christian McCaffrey offense, where at least 5 out of every 6 passes per possession per drive goes to Christian McCaffrey. I think he's going to see a lot more consistent play. I love DJ Moore. That's a great question.
Well, I was going to say, Kyle Allen was really good at handing the ball off to Christian McCaffrey last year.
Yes.
Very
really good at that. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, man. All right, well, next up, Washington FB_Nova Unlimited asks on Instagram, thoughts on Dwayne Haskins in fantasy this season?
I'm probably going to avoid. I mean, what we've seen so far is that there's a lot of depth at the position, and even guys like Jimmy Garoppolo go undrafted. Kirk Cousins, which again, I think that Mike Zimmer doesn't want to throw the ball anyway, so it's not that big a deal. But there's a lot of good quarterbacks that don't get drafted. I've even seen Ryan Tannehill go undrafted. So this isn't a knock on Dwayne Haskins. I think that he'll go out there and he'll win the job, and I think that he can be a good NFL quarterback. It's just going to take a little bit of time before I trust him as a fantasy option. And the one thing that we don't get out of him that we get from a lot of other quarterbacks is he's not going to run the ball a lot. So if you don't at least have that extra bonus going for you, it's going to be hard to trust somebody like that.
Completely agree. And then one last fan question from Andrew Schenberg, and he asks, who are you drafting first out of Stephon Diggs, AJ Green, and Devontae Parker?
Probably Stephon Diggs. I know that AJ Green is still going to have to come back and not relearn the position, but he took an entire year off of football. And so that is a red flag for me. So I'm probably going to just let I know somebody will probably draft him because of the familiarity with the name, and I will let somebody else do that. Devontae Parker had a breakout last season. A lot of it to me stemmed from the absence of Preston Williams, who was playing amazing for the first couple of weeks. And then when he went down, that's when Devontae Parker took off. And now everybody's just looking at that small sample size and be like, well, now Devontae Parker's the guy. No, like I've seen Devontae Parker's act over the years. Like I know what to expect from him. So I'm not just necessarily going to buy in just because what we saw out of, a handful of games last year. So I'm going to go with Stephon Diggs, a player who I know is very good. I think that he fits perfectly with Josh Allen, and that even though he's going to have a little bit of a learning curve trying to get together, it'll be frustrating for probably the first couple of weeks. I think ultimately the receiver you're going to want to have is Stephon Diggs.
For sure. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap things up here on the For the Win podcast. Adam, thank you so much once again for jumping on the pod with us. It's been an honor, my man.
Wait, is it For the Win because there's 4 of you?
Yep. And
oh my God. There it is. That all
There
makes
it is.
sense now. It all comes together. It only took me an hour.
And 4 main
Figure this out.
sports.
Yeah, and then we get 4 sports: baseball, basketball, football, hockey. So hey, we used our heads.
You guys cover hockey? Like, do you do hockey fantasy?
Not
Well,
fantasy, but
not
just
fantasy.
just around the league standing, stuff like that.
Oh, how fun. Good job, guys.
Thanks.
Well, I
for all
appreciate, listen, I appreciate you guys having me on. That was very cool of you guys to, take some time and allow me to come in and do my dumb stuff. We got to do a hype train with Max. Like, this has been the highlight of my week. So I
Man.
thank you guys for having me on.
We
Frank, this
thank
has
you
been
for
the highlight
coming.
of my year. Highlight of my year right here.
Well, for all the listeners at home, make sure to follow us on Instagram at For the Win Podcast and on Twitter at For the Win Podcast _. And remember, that's the number 4, not the word. Please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you do enjoy. Other than that, it's been your boys. See you on the next one. Peace
Peace
out.
Out.
Behind closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.